So I have been reading Douglas Murray's new book on democracies and death cults, Israel and the future of civilization. And this is just a remarkable read. It's already on the New York Times bestseller list. And Douglas is also the author of 8 books, including The War on the West, which is excellent, The Madness of Crowds, and The Strange Death of Europe, again, another great book. And I wanted to try to find a way that maybe I could motivate you to want to read this book and really understand what was going on October 7th, and what's going on our college campuses today, which is really pretty disgusting. But I'm going to read you a short excerpt from this book that I think will kind of encapsulate what's going on here. And this is Douglas Murray's words. I thought that night on this difference. What criticism the world wants to level at Israel, and why could they not see this? The difference between a country that had built hospitals to care for its people and a death cult that had used its hospitals to protect itself and deliberately put its people in danger. The difference between a society that built bunkers for its people and a society that built bunkers for its rockets. Within a year of the October 7 attacks, an emerita professor at Harvard, Ruth Weesey, made a point that was so searing and nobody else had dared raise it. Israel and the Jews around the world had often pointed out that the massacres on October 7th had been the worst atrocities carried out against the Jews since the Holocaust. But Weesey pointed out, saying that this puts the emphasis on the Jews, not on the victims. Some had been encouraged to mention this and noted its significance, but almost nobody had the courage to address was who were the people who had carried out this massacre. If the Jews were the victims of the 7th, then why did nobody want to dwell on just who the anti-Semites and the new Nazis were this time? Why was there so little concentration on the ideology that drove Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Islamic governments in Tehran? Were people not interested? Weesey raised another question. If people recognize the scale of the atrocities of Hamas, the atrocities that Hezbollah joined, and then why there was such a large-scale support in the West, not for the people who suffered the massacre, but instead for the people who perpetrated it. Some people had compared the outbreak of radicalism from October 2023 to the student protests of 1968. But while the protests of the 1960s had their wider aspects, they did not generally take the sides of groups who wanted to massacre Jews. Nor were they in the main supporters of Nazism and genocide. What did it mean on the streets of every major Western city? People who must have known that what must have been done on the 7th publicly took the side of the aggressors. As Weesey pointed out, perhaps the question wasn't raised because nobody wanted to face the fact that this time the Nazis were among us. Again, I urge you to read Douglas Murray's new book on democracies and death cults, Israel and the future of civilization.